talking to myself. Figured I'd talk to you. I went through a spiel thinking about this gentleman whose house I sold a few years ago. And I was talking to myself about it, and I figured I'd just get on here on YouTube and just share with you. Well, like, oh my God, you totally need to hear this. I don't want to talk about it because if I do and the people have been haunted since they bought the house, I want to get blamed. So I don't think there's any laws when it comes to haunted artwork, so we're probably pretty okay. But because usually if you sell a house and you don't disclose like that someone died in it, you could get in trouble. But if you sell a house and you think it's haunted but there's nobody that you know of that had anything like that happen, then I don't think you can get in trouble. That's why I'm remiss to talk about it. Because if I say I thought the house was haunted, then there could be a problem later. So I'm sure it wasn't haunted. Da 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 da. Whatever that means. And so, oh look, here's a fire truck coming our way. So we are out and about on the town, pulling over because there's a fire truck, and that's what you're supposed to do. Oh, look at these bad people who are not pulling over. Naughty people. All right, so they're like, he's on the other side of the highway. So what? You're still supposed to pull over, aren't you? Gotta get it on while the party's on. That's what they were saying to themselves. They were like, we heard you listening to Tenacious D earlier. Saw the fire truck and we could have pulled over, but we were thinking to ourselves, gotta get it on while the party's on. And then it just took off. Those not listening to fire truck people, they're so not listening to the fire truck. They're like, we do? No, you don't. Anyways. Oh, my goodness. Do you ever have that kind of day where you're thinking about what you want for lunch? And it's like the most important thing in the day at that time when you're thinking about it. No, I just don't know what I want. I know what I want. Alright, but okay. So I was going to tell you a story about this guy whose house I sold and let you be entertained by it if you want. First of all, I am a real estate agent. Let me preface by saying that. And if you are listening to this and you're very, very rich and you're interested in some property that was used by the Rat Pack at length, and I'm going to get a cut, then maybe we'll have a talk about it. But in the meantime, Michael is a limo driver for famous people. So he was a limo driver from the late 60s through to, or maybe even before. And, maybe even before. And he was, or it, is a favorite. So he has several people who would ask for him over and over again. So an example would be Barry White. Barry White, he said, lived at the end of a cul-de-sac. He bought every single house on the cul-de-sac and put guard towers on the end. And he said when he would go into Barry White's kitchen that he had a massive shark tank filled with sharks that were about a foot long. It makes you wonder if people who made him mad got fed there and there was no trace left. Just me saying it. Michael never commented like that. That's me. But he said that Barry liked to go to Las Vegas in the middle of the night when a certain mood would strike him, and Michael was his favorite limo driver to take him to Vegas in the middle of the night. And Michael said, I'm going to get verklempt now. And he said that Barry would show up with a black cape on every time. Willie Nelson took him to the Hefner mansion for parties and used to take him to the restaurants or wherever he was going, would take him in with him. And he said, yeah, Willie Nelson used to take me to this restaurant before he retired. And I said, what was the restaurant? He said, oh, it's Nellie's, when I was selling his house. And I said, Nellie's. I was thinking Nellie's must be something local to LA or something. And then we drove past a Denny's and he was like, oh, that's the restaurant. And I was like, he used to take you to Denny's. And I was like, Denny's, I know where Denny's is. Nellie's, I was all confused. But if you knew Michael, he doesn't actually eat at restaurants normally. He's in excellent physical condition in his 80s. And one thing he does is he makes a pot of cabbage and vegetable soup every morning with like 3 pounds of vegetables, and he eats the entire thing, and he goes on like a 6-mile walk every fucking day of his life. This guy's in good health, I gotta tell you. But he lives in Beverly Hills, but the house that he sold in Lake Arrowhead, he had taken basically every famous, because he was like a favorite limo driver of famous people during his career. And so what he did is he amalgamated all the houses and the blueprints he saw, and he came up with his own blueprint for his own house in Lake Arrowhead. And then he had an architect make it sound, and it was built to those specifications. So his second story is devoted only to his bedroom, and the bed is on a raised dais, a circular raised dais. It has a private sitting area with a fireplace and those windows that pop out. It's pretty nice, and with pictures and frames of his dogs that he's had throughout the years. He's an interesting guy. I'll tell you, the story with Michael is that when he was growing up, he loves his mom too, but he said that his mom said that there was something going on, that she just couldn't have him out in the living room. So he would go to school and everything, and he would get fed, but he would have to go straight to his room when he got home from school and watch TV and basically do everything from his bedroom. He wasn't allowed out. Now, she told him it was because of bill collectors or something. We don't know. To this day, I wonder if she was a lady of the night and she just never wanted him to know anything about what she was doing. But we don't know. But he basically was raised in a room. He was fed and everything, and he loved his mother, but he was raised in a bedroom for his own safety with just a TV set in order to not get molested or anything. And he had to be very quiet so that whatever men she had coming in and out of the house, he was home from school, he went straight to his room. He ate, drank, and did everything he did in there until the following day when he went to school. It was like there was a mouse in the house as far as any of her visitors went. They didn't know he was even there. And so he would just watch TV from the time he was a little kid. It's the only thing that he did. And so when he became a limo driver, these were the people he'd watched his whole life. He seems so autistic, even though he can drive really well, that it makes you think of Dustin Hoffman's excellent driver comment. Fuck. He said the only 2 movie stars or famous people who ever, he didn't say they were mean or bad people, but who were ever aloof with him, was Barbra Streisand and Dolly Parton. He said they were all business. They're all business once they're in the car. That's what he says about them. And so, yeah, that's what he says about Dolly Parton and Barbra Streisand. He said those two were all business. I want to say it was Dan Aykroyd who had an infection in his balls, and it took over a month to treat it, that he'd gotten from different girlfriends, even though he was married. If I've got the right guy, it was one of the Blues Brothers, one of the two guys from the Blues Brothers band, movie, and was also one of the favorites. And so shouldn't even say this on a YouTube channel, but there's no title on the fucking thing that's gonna make anyone know what I'm talking about. If you happen to roll in here and you're one of the two people watching and the 0 thumbs up, you're not gonna have a clue. So one of the stories he told me that I was just thinking about this morning was that he was the limo driver also for Dean Martin at one time, and that around 1968, 1969, Dean Martin was still married, and he was planning around that time. I could be off a little bit, but he was planning a big wedding, not wedding, but a big party at his house, and all the details were discussed in the limo with Michael listening. And so, where the service people were going to be, what they were going to wear, everything was getting worked out on the phone. It was some big party. And so Michael went out and he got a tuxedo, and he said that he actually showed up and he butlered. Of course, he has excellent manners, already, but he butlered the entire night, obviously for free, but because he wanted to get it, because he just wanted to see what was going on. And so this is what he told me, and he said that when he went to the party, he said that he got to see, now he never drove for Sinatra. No, he was never Sinatra's driver. Sinatra had his own drivers, probably Mafia, quite frankly. But so he was never one of Sinatra's drivers, but Dean Martin's one of his besties, and he was one of Dean Martin's
Note
favorites.
from customer updated.
Anyways, so he was one of Dean Martin's favorites, though, and so that's how he managed to sneak in the party, because Dean Martin had different limo drivers and stuff. He didn't say, I don't know if the Mafia just wasn't, I don't know the story with Dean Martin as far as whether the Mafia was, obviously, I don't think Sinatra got into cars with regular limo drivers. I think he was always with Mafia chosen people, but Dean Martin obviously, well, I mean, Michael was a limo driver for a lot of famous people. So, I mean, it's not like he was... So, anyways, so he sneaks into the party. And to this day, I wonder if they didn't recognize him and they just let him be there, because he's known for being the kind of person that you'd almost... He's so weird in the way that he watches things silently that I don't think anybody would even want to kick him out, or that it would even occur to him. But... he has a real weird way of watching people that makes the environment feel a little weirder in a way that most people would like. So that's just Michael. He's got a weird way of watching people without doing anything offensive, and people probably like it, and that's probably why he was such a popular limo driver. So weird way of people watching. That's weird, wild stuff. So a weird silent way of people watching. And so these are the stories I got when I was at Michael's house. And he and I talked about trying to put a book together with it. And I suppose it's not off the table. I had too much going on to write it for him. So he wanted me to co-write it with him or whatever. And I was like, I can't write. But, so basically... Oh shit, I just passed where I'm going. He said that Sinatra was very serious. He said Sinatra was standing in a corner of the room with a drink, and that people would come up and say hi to him and try and talk to him, and he was polite and everything. He didn't have inappropriate manners, but he said he looked so serious and so is the word somber? Is the word reverent? Is it serious? I don't know. He said he was so fucking serious and heavy that it was like a different environment where he was at. The corner that Sinatra was inhabiting, it was almost like a dark cloud was there, but not a cloud, but like some sort of like darkness. People would come up and say hi to him, and he's like, so he didn't speculate as to whether there was something going on with him at that night or if that's how he always was. He didn't say it disrespectfully. He said it with a lot of interest, but he said the man was very serious, very serious. He talked about it quite a bit, actually. And so, let's see. Yeah, I just told you that he said Dolly Parton and Barbara Streisand were all business. Who else? Oh, he also had some people that he would get assigned to pick people up that were trying to get famous. And so, a record company might have, they're bringing this people out today, and he might be sent out to go get the people. And they could be from all over. They could be living in a shack somewhere on the west side. They could be from wherever, and he'd be sent to go get them and bring them in. And he said one of the couples he brought in that he'd been doing that with, one of the times he went to get them later, they were like, hey, we remember you. You were our first limo driver. And it's like, he told me who they were, and I can't remember right now. But if I told you, you'd be like, oh my God, they're so famous. That song is so fucking famous. And, but he was like their first limo driver. His neighbors were very polite, but they had this kind of weird respect, awe with a little bit of fear towards him. They were very polite with him. But one of his neighbors approached me on the sly and said, did you go down into the basement? And I said, yes. And he said, were there bodies down there? I've always... I said, I didn't see any. He had placards, well-made placards in his front yard that had addresses. And the same neighbor told me that one day he was curious, so he went, because this guy spent a lot of time manicuring his yard. He was known as having the gnome yard in Lake Arrowhead. And these placards up where they lived when they commit the crime or where the crime was committed. And that he was, even though his house was so quiet and respectable and nothing ever went on at Michael's house, the neighbors lived in a chronic suspicion, even though he never did anything. That particular neighbor always was wondering what was going on. Because when I'd come up, he'd get kind of like a hushed tone and he'd kind of walk up to me, how's it going? And he did respect him, but he was always, and they were friendly, but he was always just not sure if Michael was a murderer. Isn't that funny? Okay,